Hey guys, welcome back. A while ago we received the engine, checked it over for physical damage, checked compression and found one cylinder that was a little bit low. Then we went ahead and pulled the valve cover to make sure that we didn't have a flat cam or any major mechanical issue, and decided that it's probably just a piece of carbon on a valve. I did not run a leak down test yet, but I'm suspecting that once we get the engine up and running, if I double check compression in that hole, it will return to normal like the other ones. I've already stripped the wiring harness off this engine. The only hiccup was the connector on the transmission for the park neutral safety switch or the transmission range selector. That's common for those to stick in there. So here's the clip on how to get that out if you guys have an issue like that. You use a heat gun. I don't recommend using a lighter or open flame or anything. You'll end up burning the plastic. So I have a heat gun. I'm gonna work my way around the entire thing, heat it up evenly, and I'll be able to unplug this connector. So just a little bit of heat on that one and it came out. Most of the adhesive was on the bottom. And that one, the whole thing is covered in adhesive. But just a little bit of heat melts that glue. I don't know if it melts out of this unit here or if they put that in there to seal it on purpose, but it makes it very inconvenient to get those out. On the agenda today is swapping out the oil pan with an F-body oil pan. That way it'll clear the cross member on this Chevy Biscayne. A lot of people will run the truck one and they have to trim the cross member. I don't want to modify the cross member at all, so that's why I just got the other oil pan. Now this engine came from the junkyard with oil. They typically drain them, but since this was a complete unit, they did not drain it. And I checked the oil before we did the compression test. So the first thing I need to do is drain the oil out. And there's just a 15 millimeter plug on the back of the oil pan. While I'm back here, there's two bolts that go from the bell housing into the oil pan. I'm going to take those out. There's one 10 millimeter bolt in the side of this bracket for the wiring harness. If you take that out, this plastic piece will slide this way. This is the battery cable to the starter, so you just need to drop that down out of the way. There's also a plastic shield on both sides of the engine that cover up the bell housing. Take those off, and then it's 10 millimeter bolts all the way around the oil pan. Now, if your engine is not bolted to the transmission, then you can set this on an engine stand, drain the oil, then flip it upside down. It'll make it a lot easier. But since mine is still attached, I don't want to have to unbolt everything just to change the oil pan. Just try to not place yourself under the engine in case one of the chains were to break. A fall from this height could crush a limb or yourself. Now I think that's all of the bolts. It should separate from the engine at this point. So here's the oil pan kit I got. Almost everything we ordered from I believe it's BRP hot rods. I'll have to double check, make sure that that's correct. Pretty sure it is BRP hot rods. So this is the F-body oil pan kit that they offer. These are actually a few other pieces that came in my other box. But it comes with the F-body oil sump, all new bolts. It comes with a girdle for this sump because these sumps are held in by one bolt, and there's actually 2 bolts in the oil pump. So that brace goes over the top of this and utilizes both bolts to hold this in, because there's been instances where this will just settle a little bit out of there and then it sucks air past the O-ring, and then you lose oil pressure and lose prime. Because if air can get in here, there's no siphon or suction to hold the oil in the tube. It all drains back into the pan. Every time you start up, you get aeration into the oil system. So BRP sold it, but the kit says muscle rods on it. So I don't know if that is who sells this whole package. I chose them, the BRP hot rods, because they sold a whole kit. I didn't have to piece stuff together. Everything's on one page. You kind of have to piece it together, but there's a complete bracket kit. On that same page, you pick the oil pan. You just go down the list and select everything you need. So it makes it nice and easy. There's a new windage tray, and the main piece we're after is this oil pan. So this oil pan's not as deep, but it's a little longer right here. So I'm not sure how that helps with the cross member, unless this sits up above the cross member and doesn't drop down to below that point where you have to trim it. This is the one they recommend. So that's what we're going to run and hope that it's the correct fit for this vehicle. So there's a bunch of 13mm nuts around this windage tray and also hold in this oil pickup tube to the main bearing caps, and then there's a 10mm bolt that holds the pickup tube to the oil pump. So we're going to pull the pickup tube out first. You see all that movement right there? It's still bolted up over here, but that's how much slop is in the mounting, and that's why they make that girdle kit. So 10mm on the oil pickup tube to the oil pump. And then I'm going to move my pan, because when I unhook it from the pump, it'll start leaking at the pump. And then the O-ring stuck inside the pump, make sure to pull that out before you install the new pickup tube. Now we can pull the rest of the nuts off to get the windage tray out of the way. Now this new windage tray is a lot shorter than the old one, but if we line it up on top of the other one, the cutouts are the same, and we're not going to use the front section, and that's probably because that other pan is shallow in the front, that they don't need the windage tray to go that far forward. And I'm just putting a couple nuts on there, and then I'm going to mock up this oil pickup tube. I don't know if it's going to mount the same as the original one. So I need to leave this stud empty and put nuts on all the other one. The old pickup had 2 mounting tabs that went to the main caps. This one only has 1. Now we can install the pickup. Since I have the old oil pan sitting here, I'm just going to take some of the oil. They typically say new clean oil, but it's going to go into an oil pump that's dripping out that dirty oil anyways. Just kind of wiggle it to make sure you don't roll the O-ring as you're installing it. Then I'm going to tighten this almost all the way down, but not completely tight until I tighten up the oil pump side. This little girdle has a machined step in it. The taller side goes towards the side that doesn't have the mounting tab, and the short side overlays on top of the factory mounting tab. And these bolts are a little longer than stock as well. Looks like we might need a wobbly socket to get down in there. There's not a lot of clearance. So I've got a 10mm 1/4 inch wobble socket. And that just barely clears. So you're not going to fit an impact socket in there, an impact wobbly. It's just not going to work. This is a snap-on chrome 1/4 inch drive, shallow 10mm wobble. And I just barely have enough room. I'm not going to worry about torquing this because at the angle of that wobble socket, the torque wouldn't be accurate anyways. Tighten up this other nut, or this other bolt. Now that that is tight, I'm going to go ahead and tighten up this last nut. Now I'm not torquing these either. They are a lock nut, so I shouldn't have to worry about it. We're going to leave the front 2 open. It doesn't look like they'll interfere with anything since this oil sump hangs down lower than that point and the crank is about level. Now I'm going to wipe down the surface so we can stick the pan on there. Now there's a few points that I'm going to apply some silicone to. The oil pan gasket is molded, or it's attached to the oil pan, and it is looks like an aluminum pan gasket with a molded rubber impregnated in. So there's not a lot of cleanup to do from the old one. Just mainly wiping the dirt off that was around the perimeter of the oil pan. And then where the engine block meets the timing cover, there's a little bit of the gasket hanging down from the timing cover. I'm going to put some silicone on that point. And then in the back, the same thing, the rear main seal cap has that gasket hanging down as well. So 4 dabs of silicone and we can get that oil pan mounted up in here. Now I am going to torque the oil pan bolts. All of them except for these back two are torqued to 18 foot-pounds. The rear ones are 105 inch-pounds. So 105 inch-pounds is not very much. If you divide that by 12, it's less than, probably less than 9 foot-pounds. Math is hard. Let me see, it'll probably tell me on here. 8.8 foot-pounds. Now the bell housing bolts, it didn't specify whether they went into the steel block or the aluminum oil pan. In my torque specs, it says 37 foot-pounds. I'm just going to run those in with the impact. Not too concerned with torquing those. And then, just for good measure, make sure that the drain plug is tight. Now another thing I noticed is this oil pan doesn't have all the mounting for the wiring that goes under the front of the pan, but my battery is going to be on the other side of the engine, so I don't need that positive cable to go underneath the engine up to this side. Now I'm going to put the oil filter on now to prevent it from dripping and draining all of the oil passages on the engine. This oil pan kit, the F-body oil pan, since it's a new pan, the oil filter number from Napa is a 7060. This is the gold oil filter. If you have a older F-body car, then it may take the 1040 oil filter. I'm not sure what the factory part number is, but the first oil filter I grabbed was incorrect because it fit the older version. And when they went to the 4th or 5th gen motor, they changed the thread pitch of this. I think it's a little bit bigger port. So if you're buying one of the muscle rods or from BRP Hot Rods, the F-body oil pan, then it should take the 7060. Now that that's done, I'm just going to slam these covers back on and we can move on to the motor mounts. Hey guys, thanks for watching. We put the F-body oil pan on the engine today. The next video will be the motor mounts. I got conversion motor mounts. I will open up the package, see what we have, and the next video will be all about mounting those up on the engine. If you want to be notified of future videos, subscribe, click the bell. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.